What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability? Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
It's beautiful to have you back, brother. It really is.
Nice to see you again.
I think with what you're doing, it's beautiful that you've really, done some things in the channeling community that not many people have done neither. Like when I came to see you at the Channel Panel event, that was awesome what you put together there.
Yeah, it was amazing. It's something that I knew instinctively. My time with Brad, who you know, Brad Johnson, he invited me into the channeling community when I was new, and it felt great to have us work together. Then he put together some with another channeler and then another couple, and that felt good being around other channelers. Kalina instinctively wanted to do something, and I did, so we put it together, and it's a great place. So many people, so many energies, and all the different kinds of points of view come together, and it gives something for everybody. So it's nice.
And isn't that incredible, just, how people have accepted channeling now, how acceptable it is to a vast majority of people?
Absolutely. The first time I was out channeling, it was just a whole mixed energy. And now, in the last 3 or 4 years especially, channeling starting to come back to the forefront. You know, back thousands of years, it was a normal thing. You had seers and speakers and all that. And now it gets back to the mainstream idea after we've broken through from a spiritual journey to a mental journey. Now I think we're all heading back to the spiritual journey. So.
Yeah, because when I look at your channel panel, all I see is, oh my God, the psychic medium's been replaced by the channeler, because that audience that would have been previously for the psychic medium is there available now, and people are sit there and they're okay with this, the way it comes through.
Oh, absolutely. It's something that before channeler, people who went to see psychics never looked at channelers and vice versa, and the channeling field was so much smaller. And now it's going where people are doing both. You know, I've actually seen events, expos, where channelers are getting invited into psychic expos and vice versa. So it's nice to see that. It is.
Did you ever see yourself doing this work?
If you would have asked me 2 years before I met Treb, if I would have laughed, said you're insane. If I did, I had a mental breakdown or something. But once I got to that point, then I could see a lot of what I couldn't see before about how it was right for me. I saw all the things in the past of my life build up to this beautiful place. And now looking back, I see it fit just like a puzzle. But before, I would have never guessed, ever.
And you've been through an amazing journey. You know, out of all the channelers that I've met, your journey is a little bit different. And because of that, I just want to go a little bit back as well. And prior to this even being in a reality for you, who were you? Where were you in your life?
I was a lot of things on a lot of different energies. Growing up as a teenager, I got in trouble a lot. I hung out with a tough crowd. We were always getting in trouble. A lot of violence was in that. Most people who lived as an adult back in the early 90s in the U.S., it was a violent culture, a gang culture, a drug culture, and I was part of that. You know, I was very much a part of that. I had my son when I was 19 years old, and that pulled me out of that quite a bit. Going through some of the issues that he's had with his health, all those things, that put me into a real depressed, emotional place. So after a couple years of seeing what his whole condition would turn out to be, I got into a car crash, and they prescribed me medication, so opiate medication. First it was Vicodins, then it moved all the way up to Oxycontin, morphine. At that point, I started using that, and I noticed that all my fears and concerns about the problems with my son disappeared, and I could just sit and enjoy my time with him. And I always could enjoy the time with him, but without that fear. And every parent knows what it is to have a child to worry about. But imagine that, you know, twice-fold with all these medical conditions and stuff. I used that as an escapism for years, and I finally compounded a prescription medication problem to a full-blown drug problem. And it took me a while to get out. Once I got out of that, that's when I started my spiritual journey. That's when I started seeing the beauty of everything. And after visiting churches, meditating, I finally found my way to Treb, which was my initial entity or being that I channeled.
If there was ever a moment that you can go back to say, well, look, this was what happened when I was at my lowest point. Something spoke to me, or what was it you came into contact with that really got you on that spiritual path?
Getting off my drug path and getting on the spiritual path, even though they would seem synonymous, they're not. The drug path was just because I was tired of living through depression. My body was falling apart. I lost teeth. I lost weight. I was really not healthy. My mental aspects were fractioned. So it really was a bad place. And that, not wanting that anymore, is what helped me get out of that. After I got clean, just for a few months, that's when the spiritual thing started. So I don't think there was any one thing that stopped the old life, but there was a lot of things that started the new life. And part of that was just revisiting who I was before I hit that age of my teenage years when I was kind of a hellion. And a lot of that was a spiritual thing. My parents did the church thing. I was always interested in God. I was always interested in even some of the fringe stuff. You know, for church, you're not supposed to talk about UFOs and ghosts because they contradict, but I had a friend, and me and him would read the books by ourselves personally, so it was always embedded in me already. And after the depression and the drugs were gone, I had the ability, and I had the desire to explore those more.
So, if you just go back here a bit as well and look to your mum and dad's side, was there any sort of intuition that was present there that you think maybe you've inherited as well?
With my dad, it was one experience he had where, as a Christian, you're not really supposed to think about past lives. He was in Germany, where he was stationed for a while, went into a castle. Never had been in that castle before, and he described to my mom perfectly what was around the corner: the tables, the armor, the family insignias for the castle, the royal family. That was his big whoa experience, and he never could explain that. But with my mom and her side, there was a lot of intuition. My mom is something I always told her, she kind of given me a gift. She would go meet someone for the first time, and within 2 minutes she'd say, that person's not, you shouldn't be around that person, they're not. And then after months of getting to know them, I'd see what she was talking about. They would be manipulative, violent, they would steal from me, anything like that. So there was always an intuition. And even my oldest sister, Nikki, who was adopted, she still would have been a first cousin on my mom's side. And she had premonition dreams, things like that. So I saw that. And then after I met Treb, and after I went through my part of the journey, I actually could look back at experiences at childhood and see that I was having things happen too.
So when you look back at your son's birth and all the health issues that he's had, he's been a complete gift to you in a way, hasn't he? He's made you as well the person that you are now.
Absolutely. You know, even the drug thing, that was a personal thing. That was an emotional thing. But changing from my violent, really horrible life I had as a teenager to when he was born, that was actually the biggest change in who I was as a person. It taught me that there was someone in the world to love more than myself. Before that, I loved my parents, I loved my family, I loved my friends, but never as much as myself. I didn't know that then, but after having my son immediately, I could see that.
So, at that point as well, you were going through your own changes. So, you obviously heard about channeling somewhere along the line, or somewhere along the process. Was that at the metaphysical churches that you attended?
Yeah, I went to a spiritualism church for almost a year, I'd say. I got interested because they said they could tell me the ghost, what that was about, and give answers. So I spent time there. And when I did, they got me into meditating. There was channeling there, but they always considered it mediumship. Their preachers or you know, their people who were head of churches were all certified mediums through the Lilydale Church in New York. And they themselves would do mediumship, but they would bring in guests, and sometimes they would call them like metaphysical mediums or psychics. And I didn't know that was channeling until after I'd heard the term channeling, which was way after I met Treb. I didn't even know what the word channeling was till after I met Treb and started investigating what my experience was.
So what was the point when you met Treb?
All right, so my church time was done at this point. I saw Dogma starting, and it gave me the old chills from revisiting the old church as a kid thing. So I started looking for new forms of meditation. I hit a plateau, and meditation is what I replaced the drugs with. When I had meditation, I was calm, I was serene, I was happy. So I started going through HemiSync, which is like a Monroe Institute gateway experience, binaural meditation. And I started doing those, and that really lifted up where my meditation was. And I had completed the whole course, and I had been doing it for months. And one day I was having a rough day. There was a video I watched on YouTube that was the 3D Hubble video, which gave you like deep into these galaxies. And something triggered me there. It emotionally made me sad that I couldn't be there, that I couldn't see it, that I couldn't be a part of that I was stuck here on Earth. And at that point, I said I needed to do a meditation. I need to get out of this headspace. I went in, and something told me, because in the meditations with the Monroe, it takes you step by step up, and you go up to 21 and that's where you're done. Something told me just go beyond that. Don't say 22, 23, just say beyond 21. And then that night I said beyond 21 in that moment through intuition, and boom, astral projection, I met Treb. And that was a very, very intense experience.
Wow. Who did you share that with initially? Who did you tell?
The only person I could tell at that time, which was my then wife, my son's mother. And she thought maybe, you know, she said, you're messing with those meditation binaural beats. Maybe it did something to you. And I finally told someone this, because I never talked about it publicly for a long time for obvious reasons. But about 2 or 3 days, I could not go back in meditation because it was so jolting and so energetically crazy. I didn't go back into meditation, and I actually went to the emergency room to the doctor and said, I had this thing happen. Am I crazy? Because that's what my worry was. I was genuinely and sincerely concerned that I had lost my friggin' mind. So I asked, and the doctor, I told him everything that was going on, and luckily it was a very laid back, a very liberal doctor. He didn't put me in a mental institution, and he said, it's probably just the meditations you're using, the binaural stuff. There haven't been studies on that. You know, it could cause subconscious things to come up. So I lived with that. And then I went, in my own mind, I said to myself, I have to go back because I can't stop meditating because of this experience. And I was genuinely interested to hear more. You know, what Treb told me the first time I met him was very short, and it was very powerful. He basically said, me and you are connected. This isn't what you think it is. Your whole reality, your whole experience isn't what you think it is. And there's more to share. I'm here if you want to see me. I'm here if you want to connect to me. And at that point, I could not go back and ask some big questions to get answers to.
That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah, I can feel that. Absolutely. Wow. Okay. But that's when the questioning started. That's when you started to think, well, okay, what is this? What was that voice? Was I making it up? Do I want to make it up? You know, and all those kind of questions that go with it. So what was that process like then?
Basically, I jumped head first. Anyone who knows me, I'm kind of an in-the-moment guy. I go with the flow. I do what I want. And that was the only way to do it. I said, I have to go. So I went back in. I traced the same steps. I did everything and went beyond 21. And boom, there was Treb again. And this time, it wasn't such a shock. His physical appearance was very intimidating the first time I met him, which actually created a fear in me for just about a second. And after that fear hit me, I felt a genuine sense of compassion, love, and energy, unlike anything. The only time I could put something similar in the same category is when I'm giving my son a hug or when I'm spending time with my wife. Those are literally, and even that's not a fair comparison because intuition and the sense of energy is just so much more intense in that state. You know, when you're not in your body to kind of be limited by that, you can really feel that.
So what sort of books, were there any that were influencing you at the time that were helping you on the journey? Did you read or?
No, I never did metaphysical books. I'd never heard of any channeling books at that time. The only thing I thought that could have been an influence in my own experience is the time with the church. But that, you know, even the church today were not decided on astral projection or reincarnation. They couldn't agree on anything. And that was one of the major reasons I left. I knew from watching videos about meditation that there was something called astral projection. The Gateway experience talked about it. And I had a few smaller experiences where I felt like I wasn't in my body or where I was at another place. But I also knew your mind can project images. Even at that point, I was a very good visualizer. So I could imagine the issue was I was creating images so clear in my head that it was actually feeling real to me. And that's what I figured it could be.
And what was the progression onwards from there then? I mean, where did your journey take you?
I talked to Treb and I continued to talk to him. I'd go back day after day, sometimes multiple times per day. And I never even started channeling for almost 2 years. At this place in my life, I had just come out of a drug addiction. My whole life was spent around people you didn't want to turn your head away from too much because they might stab you in the back or take your wallet. And so at this point, I meet this gigantic, scary looking thing that happens in the weirdest way possible. I needed to know if this being first was real, and that only took a couple months for me to really let it sink in that he was real and that this experience was genuine. But after that, to see if this being is something that is really a positive thing, because all my instinct, my intuition, my conversation said yes, but that paranoid version of Rob still lived in my head. I had to know. And a few months after, the few months for me to get to know he was real, then I really did. But it took me 2 years to really learn what he was sharing, the type of information. And at that point, I wanted to share the information with other people. And through my reading after meeting him and reading all these channel materials, I knew channeling was one way to do it. It was a possibility of sharing that information.
So then you did read some books, and what were they? That some of them just...
Yeah, so right after I met Treb, probably the third or fourth time, I asked him, how do I know you're real? And he told me, talk to one of your friends, an old friend of mine, childhood friend. He said, talk to Scott. Don't talk to him about me. Just talk to him like you normally would. So I talked to him, and he showed me this UFO video. And the UFO video brought up the law of one material. And when the law of one material, there was just something about it I didn't want to connect with. And then the person said, the law of one material is second only to Jane Roberts' Seth Speaks. So at that point, I actually connected to the Seth material in one sentence compared to the 5 minutes they were talking about the law of one. It made sense to me, it resonated, and it clicked my intuition. So I read that, and it was basically everything that Treb had told me, but put in way different terminology, different verbiage.
So even at this beginning part, you were probably giving other people readings, maybe?
I didn't start doing readings for probably about 3 or 4 months after I channeled, because when I first started channeling, I wanted to make sure what I was bringing through was correct or accurate. So I would do a channeling where it would just be my ex-wife or myself asking questions and have her read them to him, and then would go back and talk to Treb in the astral state and see how much of it was right.
And what did your ex-partner at the time think of that?
She actually at first was kind of interested. It was very weird for her. It was very scary for her. She also had not as religious as a background I had, but the generic Christian version. We believe in God. We go to church on Christmas and Easter. So it was scary for her. And she did it to appease me because she knew that whatever I was getting into now was way better than what I'd been getting into. So she appeased me, and she would help me because there was no one else I could talk to about it. There was no one else I could share that information with without being accused of being a lunatic. Not even my parents didn't know until 2 years after I started channeling, but I would have her do that, and then all of a sudden I would go back and I would listen, and it was close enough. It wasn't perfect, the answers that were coming, but I was so excited about channeling, I just got, as quick as I could, felt comfortable doing it, I would jump out on YouTube and put out the videos. So,
do you think that it was helping you, though, with what you was going through in your personal life with your son as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if channeling never came into my life, I still would have been good. I still would have been able to heal from what had been going on. But this made it so much more intense. It made it so much more easy to transition through that experience. Sure.
Wonderful.
I don't think I would have been able to be as receptive to it had I not gone through all the things. And that's something I really think about too, where I'm at today versus then, and where I was when it first started, when I first connected to Treb. That experience of heaviness and having a comparison, it made that brilliant light that was within the information and my personal relationship with Treb shine even more.
And it's made you lighter as well. You're a lot lighter because of it.
Yeah, emotionally, mentally, night and day. It's funny, Kalina, who is my partner now, I show her old home videos of me and my friends back. even after I slowed down and calmed down, and she's just like, wow, that's a whole different person. And it's like, yeah, that's the other Rob.
Right, yeah. Well, that's beautiful that, that you can take on the teachings as well. So it came in at just the right time, it feels like to me. So then you started to eventually give people readings, and the word got out. And I'm guessing that you saw other channelers then online as well that were helping you to give you courage to move forward.
Yeah, actually, when I first started channeling, there was only about 3 or 4 channelers who were on YouTube, and most of them weren't regular. Brad Johnson was one of the few. Daryl Anka was another one. And I think Nora Harold, Wendy Kennedy had a couple of videos, but the rest of the channelers only had a few things here and there. So it was actually, for me, starting out, I had very little reference. I had actually only heard of Brad a few months before he connected with me, because we did a book with a guy who did books with both of us, named Jefferson Viscardi. So that helped link us up together, which was my first other channeler I ever met in my life. And going through that whole experience, it was weird. Like, now you go on YouTube, there's 1,001 channelers, and they channel everything in the book. But the types of channelers that were there when I first started, there were very few, and even less with ET. So it was like a whole different ballgame back then. There wasn't a lot to bounce off. For a while, I actually shut off all of my other channeling. I didn't watch any of the other channeling. I didn't listen to it, because I wanted to make sure whatever was going out was actually from Treb, not from reflections of other, because I had heard other people talk about channeling being filtered, and I heard about your own perspective mucking up the waters for the message. So I didn't want that to be a part of my experience. So for probably the first 3 years, the only time I would listen to another person's channeling is if they were doing an event with me, or if they wanted to talk to me about something, because I needed to know who they were and if their channeling resonated with me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I do. And that's been the discussion throughout this documentary as well, is discernment. I'm guessing that's something that you've had to face up to as well.
Sure.
What, does it feel right? Is the message coming from love? Do you discern sometimes?
I discern everything. Every time I listen to my own channeling or anybody else's, I always do that. And a lot of people do it through their mental guises, others do it through their emotional. I do it with both. It has to first hit the heart and then hit the mind. And if it makes sense in both, then it's good. It's good channeling. If it's not, then I just don't tune into those channelers specifically. There, like I said, 1,001 channelers out there, and you can pretty much tell the channelers I resonate with by the people who I've worked with. If I have worked with them, and it's my own work, me and Kalina, or just my own, then yeah, I resonate with them for sure.
So with your process, it wasn't like it was, 15 or more years spent, being meditating, working with small groups, constantly, tuning this thing in. It was really, it could be seen to be a quick succession of, 5, 10, less than that, 8 years. You said, didn't you?
Yeah.
Years of making this, your full-time work in a sense as well. Do you feel that we've entered a different time now where it doesn't take as long to make this fully activated within us?
For people who are truly invested in what they want to do and they're putting their energy and effort to it, absolutely. I noticed back when I first started channeling, it was harder for people to get their information out there. It was harder for them to get people to resonate with them or whatever. And now it's quick. Part of that's the internet, but part of it is a driving forward of manifestational abilities on all people. As a collective, we're trying to tighten that bridge up, and we're trying to get the screws in a little tighter. And when we do that, it creates the quicker ability for us to reflect. But another part of that is my own conscious awareness that it can be quicker. So that's why I see it happen a lot more than I did.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And where did you develop the ability to go down? Because you do this toning as well.
Yeah.
How the heck did you learn to do that?
It's actually a very funny story. When I do the toning, that is totally, went to a school to learn how to do that. I never watched videos to learn. I used to ohm. One day I was in the middle of getting ready for a channeling, and all of a sudden that ohm just came out, and it shocked me. I was like, what the hell is that about? And I don't know. I still don't know why that happened. But yeah, it just came out one day randomly out of nowhere.
When I first saw you go down at the channel panel, you because you had the microphone as well, it was just resonating throughout the whole building. It was right, and I was like, "Wow, this is awesome!" That tone, it's like, and then I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that such things existed." And then more and more channelers came my way with that toning. It was a way to take some of them down. It was incredible.
Yeah, for me, it's like the chakra system we have, the 7 points of energy. Each one of them are emotional and evolutionary themes. And in order for me to get into a channeled state, I have to have all of them vibrating equally. That's why I do the ohming. At first, what it takes me now, 7 minutes of alone time to focus and 3 minutes to connect, used to take almost a whole hour or hour and 15 minutes to do. And I think that's another reason why that body just switched over to the deep, guttural, vibrational ohm so that it would cut my time down. Normally, when I first started giving sessions to people, I would literally have to set a time with them and then 1 hour before sit in the living room ohm and meditate and center myself.
Wow, brother, that is some dedication.
I have an addictive personality to begin with when I was starting this and going through. So I took my drug addiction, I put it all in. And that's one of the fast track reasons I think for me, being able to channel so quickly. Most people who say I want to learn to channel, they go to seminars. They'll take a class from another channeler on how to channel. And then that'll be that for the day. For me, I was literally meditating 3 times a day, an hour and a half or more each time I would meditate. And when I wasn't meditating, I had my eyes closed whenever I could get away with it.
And this was on top of looking after Jeremy, your son?
Yeah. On top of that. And he would go to school, which would help a little bit. But at that time, I was babysitting up to like 6 to 9 kids at a time. So literally, I would have to have the older ones keep an eye on the other ones while I'd go and meditate, or when they were all taking a nap. And I say, come back and get Uncle Rob if you need me. But I took the time. And the energy, the time, and that excitement was what paved the way for me to get it quick.
What does channeling mean to you nowadays?
And again, that definition always shifts. But for now, what it means is being able to connect to yourself in the deepest way. I always use that analogy that Treb and Aridif first shared. Most people think of channeling as another energy coming into your body and speaking, and that's correct, sure. But the analogy that Treb and Aridif use that is so synchronistic is if you're at a party with a bunch of other people, the music's loud, how's the only way you're going to be able to hear someone? You go next to them and sit. So imagine your body as your consciousness. You're sitting next to this entity and listening to them. And when you listen to them, you gain more insight. So then your consciousness grows and your body in that scenario grows until you tap the person 3 foot to the left of you. Then they start talking to you and your consciousness, your body grows. Now you're able to sit next to everyone at the party at once. And that's how channeling's been for me. That's the kind of analogy that explains my journey in channeling. I first met Treb, expanded, Aridif, expanded, and then all of a sudden I'm connecting with the Nihal collective consciousness, with Metatron, and with over 350 ETs. And that's because my own consciousness and insight have grown out to the place to receive it.
Why ETs? Why do you think that's the case for you?
I don't know, and that's the weird thing. It could be because I was open to them. When I first heard I had a connection to Metatron, that's an archangel energy, and that freaked me out because of the whole religion thing growing up, my lack of resonance with Christianity, no experience with Catholicism or the ancient Hebrew traditions. So that was confusing for me. But ETs I was already open to. When I was a kid, I was already reading the books about what UFOs were. Before it was popular for scientists to say that life is in the universe, I believed that.
And again, on my journey on this, there is no separation between them and us. That is us having another experience somewhere else.
Sure, absolutely. And I try not to explain as much on those terms sometimes, because you would not believe how many times people have such a hard time wrapping their head around that. So you have to explain it in the terms that they can pick up on.
Well, you imagine going to a UFO conference and that being your style of conversation. I mean, that's where some of this, that's where the UFO feels kind of going into consciousness now. Well, actually, it's really going into consciousness, let's be honest, right?
Sure, sure.
And it's not as much nuts and bolts as it used to be.
And that's something I've started to see too. You know, people like Reuben Langdon, he started off in the UFO field and went over to the consciousness, the metaphysical side of it. And a lot more people are doing that. A lot of things are now one and the same.
So then I believe at some point Treb started introducing you to Aridif. And my words for this is like, you know, it's like a 2.0 version of Treb or more.
Yeah, absolutely. Treb introduced me to Aridif in the creation of a book. I read the chapter, because I'm not conscious when I'm channeling. I read the chapter, most intense information in the whole book. I instantly wanted to know who Aridif was, what it was. Treb described the way that you are with me, our connection through the soul energy, probable future reality, high probable future reality, that Aridif is with him. So that made me think, then that means if Treb is a possible future version of me or another aspect of me, that means so is Aridif, because Aridif's Treb's counterpart in that way.
And to think that it's already there and it's happening now, you've not got to get there, it's happening now. And look how wise you already are when you've connected to that other aspect of yourself.
Absolutely, it's fun to watch linear time melt in your face, and it's that's one of the greatest experiences about this, is understanding how complex the reality construct is.
Because obviously sat with an Englishman right now, Aridif comes across as very English in the way that it's using the larynx and all the way it resonates. It's incredible.
It is, and it's very weird. That's a weird story on its own, but yeah, Aridif is an intense being. There's very few channelers, I can count them on my one hand, that in my own belief bring through the incredibly deep perspectives that Aridif does. And for me, and I know I have a huge bias here because I have this personal relationship with Aridif, but to me it seems very insightful and very deep and very complex, and can explain it in ways where he's not, he's unforgiving, or let me re-say that. Basically, he brings through unapologetically. He doesn't care if someone says, well, that is a bit complex for me. He trusts humans enough that at one point or another we'll break it down. We'll figure it out.
I've listened to it. I've had the experience of the channeling, and yes, it's complex, but that's a beautiful thing as well. Because with that, when you listen back to it a couple of times, you're like, oh, actually, I do get that. That does make sense. It's just the energy that you bring through, I think sometimes so like overwhelming. It's like, whoa, well, it's just a slap round the face, isn't it? Wake up with the information. So yeah, I totally get how people will get it in the end. But for yourself, you must think, well, how has this deepness of information come through? This is not me that's present here bringing this through. And when you do bring it through, you're in a trance channel.
Yeah, I have no awareness. When I'm connecting with Treb or Aridif, I'm doing the same thing. When I first met Treb, astral projected state, me and him get to hang out and talk. So that's my experience. But by the time I met Aridif, I had already come to terms with what was coming through me wasn't me. So that wasn't a big deal for me. The intensity level, that was a bit extreme at first, but the more I understood the nature of my connection to Treb and Aridif and the mechanics of channeling and how it works, then it was pretty easy hurdle to jump over. I don't think I could have made it if it was a hard hurdle to jump over. So.
Absolutely. And do you feel as well that, the teachings are sometimes there for you as well? Are they teaching you as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's not a thing that Aridif or Treb has ever said that isn't just as applicable for me in my own life as it is for someone else. Absolutely.
And if they're giving a reading to someone, and if you're, I mean, do you always get it? I mean, even though you're out of the picture, are you able to hear any of it?
There is like one time out of 100 where I'm actually able to listen in on that, and that's when I need to hear in the moment what's going on. But it's weird. The way I experience it is when I'm with Treb, when I'm disconnected from the sounds of it, I'll go back to listen, like an event or a personal session that wants to go public where they want to share it on YouTube. I'll go back and listen, and I know the answers before they're ever said. I know the answers most of the time before the question. And I asked Treb and Aridif, why is that? Because that information's coming through my body. So it's a part of me. And that's why, as a person, people who channel long enough and who are actually resonating with the channeling and resonating with the aspects that we are channeling, their perspective, life, and whole viewpoints change so drastically too, because they're amalgamating their energies with other beings.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, you must see the personal transformation when you give a reading to someone, how they do shift in that, once you come out of the reading and they're,
Oh yeah, energetically.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. It's a very common experience to feel someone very droopy or heavy at the beginning and come out and they're just, wow.
Yeah,
very light.
and their resistiveness at the beginning of the reading as well compared to at the end. And are you kind of, sometimes giving readings on, is it more of a soul growth kind of reading? How is it different to a kind of psychic or medium reading?
A psychic or medium reading, from what I've seen, and I've never had one myself, but I've seen them done. I have had through the church, but I don't consider that a professional reading. That's more religious reading. Most people are going into, what should I do in my life? I'm at this point. What decisions should I make? What does my future hold? That's a very third density version of using your intuition. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a judgment. That's just a very day-to-day life. And there are huge applications for that, no doubt. But what the higher density beings, or higher dimensional, or extra dimensional, whatever you're channeling that's channeled, are usually coming from the perspective of, at very least, your higher self. When you're connecting to a guide that resonates with you, at least in my experience, that has to come in through the higher self. So a higher part of yourself is there. They're not going to concentrate on those things. And I heard your interview with Brad Johnson, and he said something to the effect that you can channel these beings who have a very three-dimensional perspective, and that's very true. But when you hear a person channel and they're not talking about those day-to-day things as if they are day-to-day things, and they're talking to them, to anyone, about how it's a part of your soul's journey, how it's a part of your growth, mental, emotional, and how the multi-dimensional parts of yourself start going off with intuitive signals, that's how you know that energy is different. So channeling, usually, at least the channeling I listen to with the people who I resonate with, that's how it's different. It's multi-dimensional. It's applicable on third density level and fifth density level.
But that kind of talk wasn't around many years ago.
No.
Not as much as it is now. And every time I've said to the channelers, oh Christ, not again, when I've not brought it through, that is, why? And they're like, it's time. You need to know now. It's time to wake up. And it is quite mind-boggling that there's much more than this just going on. Do you think there's an evolution in the channeling work that you're doing?
Absolutely. Every year I channel, I see more of my channeling come out. I see different things of my channeling happen. And I see different energies for myself and collectively. What you said is, we're ready now for that. And that's how I experience it myself and how I see things collectively. When I'm ready for certain energy of channeling to come through, it comes through, or when the collective's ready. I've had channelings before that I've shot a month before. No one's ever heard it but me and Kalina, none of our friends who are channelers. And all of a sudden, when I put it up online, within a week, none of us have talked, none of us have created this elaborate story to bring out new information. But all of a sudden, the same subjects, the same constructs, even very intense information like the Orion Wars, That wasn't talked about 5 years ago. But 2013 comes along and all the channelers hit on that one concept because it was time to hear about that story.
So one channel that I connected with, Adamus, in his truth, his teachings, he said that the whole ET subject is a distraction. But what would you say to that?
I would say it's a distraction if you don't want to connect to that energy. I channel Metatron, and he also has said that before. You guys are thinking so much about the star systems, planets, that you're not putting your head into where it belongs. So I can understand both perspectives there. Yeah. People who resonate on a level with ETs that makes them feel like they can grow, then it's right for them.
But I think the bit they're missing, and I think we'll both agree on this, is actually it's you the whole way along. It's you and the soul, your soul having that experience as that. You see it as a savior or someone that knows better. It was you all the way along.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, no matter how we take it, if you believe in oneness, then there is no separation of ETs or ascended masters or archangels or demons. They're all the same thing. They might manifest themselves differently. And, you know, Adamus, Jeffrey Hoppe, I love that guy. He's a good friend of mine. I understand his perspective too. I understand all the perspectives. None of them are invalid. It's just the way you want to experience it. And with him, he's not. It doesn't do anything for him. So that's why he doesn't care about the ETs, you know. And I've had this conversation with him many times, so I get that idea. But for some people have that archetype within them that aren't ready for archangels, that aren't ready for ascended masters. And the ET is much easier for them to accept than those two. I was that way. Archangel Metatron, what? You know? And it's weird, but that's how people work. And they have to come to the point when they're ready to come to it.
That makes complete sense to me. Right?
Yeah.
But that does, absolutely. Where would you like to take your work? Where would you see your work going, in a sense?
My idea of doing my work includes me being able to travel, and that's a selfish thing. I want to see the world. I want to be a part of meeting new people. I want to be a part of, if this person wants to be a part of my journey and it helps their life, I want to be a part of that. So channeling while traveling, the one kind of little stop there is with my son. You know, he has a lot of medical things. And you know, the people who don't know what cerebral palsy is, I'll try to give them a picture. My son's 19. He doesn't walk. He doesn't talk. He has to be bathed, fed, diapers, the whole 9 yards. He's in a wheelchair. So that's the hurdle there. So I've kind of supplemented. I've taken it to the online when I can, and when I can travel, I do. I'm in Chicago right now. I don't live in Chicago. So Kalina, my partner, is a big part of that. And she's also part of all the work. I mean, you cannot hear the word ET Whisperer, Rob Gauthier, Aridif, Treb without having Kalina's energy touch it. She's a beautiful part of that. And both of us want to get out there. We want to go and just do more of the channeling. And that's kind of one thing that really excites both of us, is putting energy and time into sharing the information that's changed so many people's lives. And it's not, you know, I didn't do anything, Aridif didn't do anything, but I still enjoy seeing that part of the reflection of what part I'm playing in their journey and them with me. Greetings to Kevin, this is Aridif, that is A-R-I-D-I-F, and this is its spell. We understand there are many queries in this day, but before diving into those queries, there are two things in which we wish to express. The first thing, above and beyond all things expressed within this day to know, feel, and perceive that you are loved is of the utmost importance. Secondly, it is our greatest excitement and within our greatest excitement to co-create with you in this moment, in all previous and future moments as you navigate your linear time. You may begin your queries at your leisure.
Thank you for joining us.
It is our greatest pleasure.
Now, Rob calls you a future part of his soul, a future aspect, a future incarnation. What is it?
Yes, in most terms that most of the human collective consciousness would understand, we are perceived as a probable future incarnation or a probable future reality of Rob. But in a heightened version or other perspective, we are one fractal of consciousness within the oversoul structured unit that resonate and co-create with Rob, meaning we are co-creating upon levels of mental, emotional, and energetic vibrational resonance.
That conjures up pictures for me that you haven't actually incarnated yet, that you're actually ready to incarnate, but you haven't fully formed yet into an actual life of Rob's.
Yes, that is how you would perceive it, but we are not bound by linear time. In our perspective, you are probable future, you are probable past, and you are probable engagement of this now reality.
Let me ask you this. Would you perceive yourself as coming across as quite technical?
In our own perspective, we would say that we come across as technical as needed to be in this moment, utilizing Rob's own mechanisms, utilizing his own psychic maturity, connecting with his own networking of psychic and intuitive abilities. We are connecting at the level that we are able and he is willing. At that level, all of humanity has the opportunity or option to co-create upon the same level that we are, even if they are not willing to look at some of the energies that are considered too technical for their own perspective. That energy is irrelevant to our own perspective. We do not wish for others to wish to co-create with us in order for us to co-create with you.
So when you say this is a potential aspect of Rob's future, am I saying it the right way?
Yes, this is one way to say it, and in our own perspective, highly resonant with our own perspectives and our own beliefs, yes.
But this could change. You know, when Rob has lived out his lives to get to the point where you are, you may not be the same.
Rob has his own free will, as do we. Therefore, if he were to murder someone in the next one day, his energy would be less resonant to our own. This would mean that he would likely not be able to connect to our energy as deeply. If that energy were true, then less probabilities would occur where his energy connects with ours.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Can we all connect to our future aspect of ourselves?
Yes, and in fact, most of you do, all of the time. When you are go into your day-to-day experience and you are asking yourself, what should I do with this one situation, this one given energy? You utilize a great deal of energies to mentally go through what should be done, emotionally come through all of the probabilities that could occur with both decisions or multiple decisions. But this does not account for the intuitive parts of you. The intuitive parts of you can contain those future aspects, sharing information. Most of the time it is your higher self, but your higher self also brings down information from your future versions, your past versions, and your parallel versions, as you would see it through your linear time perspective.
By connecting to a future aspect of yourself, are you able to ask advice rather than be giving direct, like, you have to do this? Is it more of an advice way of connecting with something?
Yes, if one entity or energy, whether it is a part of your own construct of consciousness or not, is directing you, they are only doing so because the version of them that you are connecting with is not in resonance with free will. Your own beliefs, your own structure of thinking has allowed you to create a version of your future self that would boss you around, that would impinge and impede upon your free will. In our own perspective, those energies are never helpful to your day-to-day creation. If you desire to make the most of your experience on Earth, connecting to all consciousness that observe free will as a standard and as a guaranteed version of energy in all beings' life, no matter what dimension, no matter what experience, that energy is much more conducive for co-creating.
But you must be coming back for a reason. Do you feel like you're pulled to come into this moment now? Is the future pulling you in and the past pulling you in to be working with Rob right now?
Yes, we do not perceive it as the past or the future. That is a linear perspective, as most of you are experiencing in this moment. All we see is an energy that is resonant and open to co-creation. That co-creation benefits the both of us. Therefore, we desire that co-creation. It is within our excitement, within our joy, within our bliss to co-create that energy. And then we step forward, as that is the conditioning in our own experience, to always follow those guided missiles of love, or always follow that tracking of energy that is free will oriented and excitement based.
So by you coming, and I'm going to use my human terms here, right? So excuse me, by you coming back and coming into this timeline right now, helping people like you have, and all the great readings that you've done, but really you're progressing yourself even further than you're at right now.
Yes, of course, in every interaction we have, we are growing and expanding. It is often termed in our conversations with many other beings that as you ask questions of things in which you believe that you are unaware, you are exploring parts of you that you have yet to explore with your lower fractal consciousness. As you do this, we are reflecting that version. We are looking at parts of our own lower fractal and higher fractal consciousness that we have not. Therefore, both of us are growing. In that case, we always congratulate and thank those beings for creating with us.
But how would one connect to any aspect of any of their future lives that would help them in the moment now? How does one do that?
Yes, it is not a sense of future in our own perspective, but if you believe that something is going into the future, you believe it has more understanding and knowledge than you yourself would. That means they are aware and knowledgeable of the past. In our own perspective, time is not one measure to utilize what is the greatest co-creational tool. What is resonance. If you utilize resonance alone, synchronicities that bring you resonance, the understanding of your emotional and mental reactions to that resonance, this will be a much greater indicator of useful information and of information that you can take in your day-to-day life and use it to the greatest of your ability.
Has a aspect of myself approached myself in a sense to grow myself that I'm not aware of?
This version of you that you are in this moment, of course, there have been multiple thousands of interactions. All of those interactions are on subtle levels. Those, even before knowing what the word channeling meant, were happening to your experience. Those subtle fields of pull, those subtle fields of co-creation, and the subtle fields of your self-giving were all needed in order to co-create those experiences. Most humans believe that there must be a voice inside of their head in order to receive information, that there must be an instant opportunity for them just to feel some energy pulling upon them. But in all truth, the energies of your subtle intuition are often those that are most powerful, from not only your own point of evolution in this experience, but also from the way that you're psychically open, the original version of that human version. The original constitution of each human being allows very little psychic energy in, and that is mainly due to your own programming. You are growing up in school being taught that you are a logical being, that there is no such thing as fairy tales, that psychic ability is fraudulent. Therefore, naturally, you close down those energies. But the natural version of the energy that pulls upon you has to be subtle in order to comply with those laws, in order to comply with the creation that you have built.
Where you're coming from right now, your reality, is it just as real as our reality?
Yes, of course. When I look at my own body, the physical structure of my body, it is just as real as yours is to you, but it is not as limited, because I have not chosen to co-create in a third density setting. Instead, I look into the sixth density version, where I'm able to co-create with thought and change the matter around myself. It is just as real, but it is not bound by all of the regulations and restrictions that your third density experience comes from. If you are asking Rob, how are you related to Aridif, he will tell you a future probable reality. If you're asking me how I experience Rob, he is another version of the fractal consciousness within the Oversoul that is resonant enough to create with. In the version that I must express to other humans for their own benefit of understanding, then I would describe Rob as a previous probable version of my own energy. But all three of these things are simultaneously true, but resonant on different levels to the different perspectives and the different experiences.
But you've not incarnated yet, or you have not experienced that.
Yes, I am living inside of an energetic and physical body as you are, even though it is less dense. Therefore, I've incarnated. I have my own version of my own life that I experience in day-to-day experience. Therefore, I've incarnated. The time experience that you have is much different than the one that we do, so we are not limited to that version. The reason why we engage Rob as a probable past version is because he experienced linear time. Once he experiences this, we must relate in a way where he can also understand and resonate.
I'm guessing, and it's very obvious, isn't it really, that the life that you come from was the one that was the best match to help Rob with this work now?
Yes, from Rob's own perspective and his own creation. From my own, it is a different story. Rob is a reflection of myself, which helps allow me the greater opportunity to understand third density thinking and emotional constructs.
But if Rob is going through that for you now, many hundreds of years ago, why would you need to come back to re-experience that through Rob now when you've already gone through it?
Yes, I do not experience it through Rob in the full way. I am with him, I co-create with him, I experience with him, but I am not tied into his body. It is a separate consciousness from your perspective. Two separate consciousnesses co-creating in a middle place. Even though we are connected, even though the Oversoul holds, the Oversoul has trillions of incarnations per Oversoul, all of those with one desire to experience. That experience from Rob's own opening, his own ability to receive, and my own excitement to co-create with a version of me that resonates, a version of my own self that connects to third density mindset. All of those things come together in order to create the experience of us coming through Rob in a channeled state, or Rob channeling us in his own perspective.
So from Rob's own perspective now, is he channeling to any other aspect in his past, if we use that analogy from a human perspective?
Yes, of course. The Nihor collective consciousness is one that is a linear past version that Rob co-creates with. In that version, it is also probable future incarnations. Your understanding of linear time creates an experience where it must go in one order. In our experience, due to the lack of our limitation, we are able to try to perceive it in a much different way than your own construct is able to see it. So when you are expressing the terms of past and future, what we are seeing are creations that were made in order for you to experience the Earth experience the way that you need to experience it, as a collective and as separate entities.
So from this life all the way to the life that Rob's bringing you forth, or bringing you into this one reality now, what about all those other lives? Why are none of those communicating with Rob?
Yes, some of those energies are not resonant to Rob. Some of those Rob are not aware of. Some of those Rob is not resonant with. The Oversoul contains so many iterations and so many different incarnations that it would be impossible to connect all of them. By Rob's own choosing of opening his energy and our own desire to co-create with an energy that is both similar and vibrationally clear, that energy is a process of all of us creating together, and the opportunity for Rob to change his vibration and connect to other components or other versions of himself. Those other versions are not limited through channeling state in the way that you might perceive, but in Rob's own day-to-day experience, within his own higher self, and with all of our co-creational energy. These are the energies that are most beneficial for all of us. Treb, myself, Rob, all of us in one co-creation together, along with entities such as Kalina, Jeremy, or self, all of the beings who play a part of our larger scale that co-create with us upon all the levels of desire to open, to understand, and to create together, create the exact tapestry of experience you are feeling, you are perceiving, and you are connecting to in this moment. Your own perspective would change if your beliefs also changed. You would not be co-creating with a version of Rob or ourselves if you were changing your vibration drastically in one way or another. The version of you that is creating with us is also the version that is resonant to the co-creative status of all of us.
That makes a lot of sense. Is it healing, or is it no? Is it helpful, do you think, if in this moment now some of us watching this would try to connect to a past aspect of us that's wanting to connect for healing purposes? Is that a helpful thing to do, or is that just monkey noise?
It can be helpful for those who are pulled upon by their past incarnations. They have belief systems that support their own now moment being affected by past or future time periods. If you have that belief system, it can be helpful to create healing for those attributes of you. But in our perspective, what would be much more healing is changing the part of your vibration that resonates with trauma, the part of your vibration that links you to that past life, that is creating similarity enough for there to be a co-creation in the first place.
Right, so what you're saying is, what we could do here is that if we have issues in this particular present moment now, we could relate those to a past life or future incarnation that's causing those issues, and we could heal those ourselves by calling forth that life and healing it in some way?
What we mean is the past life that feels connected to you is only connected to you because you are sharing vibrations in the moment. Those past lives of yours are only probabilities. Those past lives of yours are not relevant to you in this moment unless your energy aligns with him. Let us use, for example, those of you who continue to lose loved ones, who have parents and siblings and friends die continuously, will start creating mental and emotional complexes where you are not able to love others because you fear for their death. In that co-creation, your energy in this moment is what draws you back into those lifetimes where you are creating deaths, where there are traumas, where all the people around you are also dying. So by that link being created, it does not come from the past to the future. It comes from you in the now and then goes back to that future. Just as we have not come back for Rob, Rob has come forward to us. Rob has opened up to our own energy. What you are creating in your moment is what creates those links to those incarnations to begin with. If you want to change the experience, change the now moment.
All power lies in the present moment.
Of course.
Is the present moment then all we have?
Yes, unless you believe that that past and the future are relevant. Most humans do, and this is why they are not able to enjoy themselves at the highest capacity. When you refuse to relate to yourself in the moment, which is the only experience that truly has the capacity to manifest, then you are negating all of the possibilities to manifest what you desire. So many humans link emotions and thoughts back to the past. They create a story of who they are from the experience of what they have experienced. All of those are projections of that linear past, created by yourself to give you a story. If you change that story, you could change your now. If you disconnected from the story altogether, there would be no need for that now moment. That energy of the now could be as malleable as your probable futures are.
You know, when you've got something like this in front of you, you're like, you could ask anything, yet nothing is really bothering me right now.
Yes, we understand. Perhaps we can give you something useful for this occasion. The three constructs in where you are able to create and know that you are creating is by living in that now moment. That gives you the power to create what you desire. If you start attaching all of those previous and future incarnation constructs into your now moment and have that belief or the sense that they are affecting, negatively or positively, then you create that version. So if you stay in the now, you are truly creating that energy. The second construct of being in your joy, doing what it is that you are feeling resonant to do, that pull that we have expressed, that excitement, that co-creation, that energy keeps you in alignment, where no matter how far you go, if you stay in the now and in the excitement, all things that are future, all things that are past will not negate your ability to manifest. The third construct, to look at all of the relationships that you have, all of those that you co-create with. They will always give you reflections on where your resistance lies. By going through all three of these steps, it gives you the opportunity to both see what part of resistance is created within yourself and what part you are choosing to create as you try to navigate your third density experience.
Well, if everything's in the present moment right now, then I don't really understand where you're coming from then. Because if the power lies now, why are we connecting to you in the future?
Yes, your perspective is that you are connecting to me in the future. I myself do not perceive that energy. Rob himself perceives that because he experiences linear time. He has to use verbiage to create a sense of understanding for others, to understand where we come from in the whole scheme of consciousness. We agree with you that that is not relatable to the time or even a specific matter. What is co-created in this moment, the energy that we are sharing, both Rob and myself and both of us collectively with others, is the energy that is mattering to ourselves. The energy of past and future are only constructs of labels that are utilized for you to understand why things occur the way that they do in your matrix of experience. But your changing of perspective, your changing of the way that you operate can change those restrictive experiences as well.
You know what's coming to me right now when you're speaking to me is like, no, this isn't a future. This is just another parallel reality that's coming through.
Of course.
And we're calling it a future because that reference makes more sense, because if everything's happening now, the future's already happened. But maybe, why am I saying parallel then? I don't know. Why is that coming to me?
Yes, this definement would be accurate because it is something that is not sharing the same time space in your perspective. The parallel version is an implementation of thinking that allows you to see two things occur at once without worrying about the time periods, the energies related to time, or involving linear time altogether.
Will the channeling phenomena, is it going to change? Is this always what it's going to be about? As more people make documentaries, this will just be it? Something along these lines, or?
Yes, of course, and what we perceive is that this will be different for each and every one of you. You yourself, it will expand into a great deal of many things within high probabilities if your energy continues to move as it has moved in the last 2 years. When others perceive it, they can utilize the beneficiality of that energy to co-create other things in their own experience, to have enough gumption within their own mind or in their own beliefs to step forward in their excitements, to have enough desire to create the artistic expressions that they have been trying to create by hearing simple words of follow your bliss. All of the energies of those that co-create with channeling in general will be experienced differently. Collectively, channeling will be integrated to an individual experience. Why would you need to speak to another being who is channeling when you yourself are able to channel? And as you move into the formats of higher densities, you will find that it is specifically a very personal experience. It is not needed to co-create with any energy that you do not resonate and pull deeply within yourself. Each of those beings also will have intimate relationships with you. They will connect to the deepest sense of your emotions and energies. Those are the extended versions of yourself manifest, and once the collective consciousness perceives channeling in that way, there will be great deal less resistance in the entirety of the Earth Collective.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Well, what makes any of this real? What is? I mean, I'm perceiving that there was a beginning, there was an end to my life, right? In a sense I'm aware now, and I'm going to cross over, and whatever's going to await me is going to await me. But who says any of that's true?
Yes, in one sense it is, in another it is not. The only thing that the soul requires is experience. So by going into a physical body and going through the incarnation, you are doing just this. You are experiencing separation. That energy of co-creations with others gives them the opportunity to use you as a reflection of either separation or connectivity. After you leave the physical body, it will have not been real. That energy will not be relevant to you. You will not perceive in the same standard format as you are perceiving in this moment. That energy of your own expansion will get your access into the place of oneness feeling true, oneness feeling real, each and every experience colored with that oneness. So your own experience can show both truth and lack of truth with that energy of it being real. What makes it real in this moment is your own perspective as you dive into this experience. If you are detached emotionally, like many within the human collective are, in some ways that makes your experience more real. When you navigate outside of connection to reality, those who utilize formats of drugs, those who become so ungrounded through their version of spirituality that they no longer connect to the earth as an experience, then it is less relevant for them. Pending upon your own interpretation and perspective of that experience will give you the percentage of realness or lack of realness it has. This is why when you are going into your experience in each moment, being aware of that moment is beneficial. It gives you the realness of all of the experience and gives you the opportunity to soak that in after leaving the physical body.
I wanted this documentary to go beyond the unknown, to go into the unknown, and I'm searching for that, right? I am searching for that, but I'm struggling right now to go in that direction, because I feel right now being with you that I'm veiled in a sense, that there's. Would you tell me something, or would there be any purpose for you to tell me something that was something I didn't know already?
Yes, and this is the paradigm. When you know what you know, then you don't know what you don't know. And this is the co-creation, the part of being on earth that gives validity to the experience of separation. As you are going through your experience, you believe that you know nothing. You believe that these unknown things to you have no relevance, or even trying to connect to those things could have relevance. But what is true is that as you are experiencing what is true to you, that will paint the entire circuitry of your experience, going into the unknown. That energy itself only can be experienced in your human experience by opening yourself up to the truth of all that you do know, the relevance of your own truth, being honest with yourself, connecting to those parts of your energies that you are not willing to look at or have perhaps sloughed to the side for a very long time. This journey has given you this. This construct has also allowed you to be able to create questions in areas of things in which never before you would have seen, never before would you have thought to think. And in that experience, opening yourself up to this moment will give you guidance for the next.
Yes, absolutely. But then I could say, and I feel like a broken record saying this, all I'm doing is speaking to myself.
Yes, of course. And this gives you another fun way to look at all of the things in your life that you've experienced. When realizing the person you were screaming at in traffic was actually yourself, it becomes quite stupid in your own mind. But also it can be very exciting and fun.
But I don't know what you know. So if I'm speaking to my own self, I am not aware or have no knowledge of the things that you say within this unit.
Yes, we understand. And this is your own perspective saying, I am separate being. Aridif is this being, I am this being. We are so vastly different in our day-to-day experiences. You have already created an energy just in co-creating with us previously. You have created an energy in this moment that expresses the separateness of ourselves. We perceive you as a part of us, but we also perceive our own individuality in the construct. You speak of the human ego. That is the version of you that sees yourself so separately. When you go into the higher densities, when you go through the evolution of consciousness, your ego transmutes into your sense of knowing that you are an individual construct, but also knowing how deeply implemented that personality is within the collective consciousness. You can see your oneness, but also see yourself within that oneness, or see the oneness within yourself. The ego portion of the human consciousness has not allowed or afforded the opportunity of transmuting into the version of ego that will become your independence within a collective consciousness. In our own perspective, we know that you are a part of us, but because we are still in a physical reality, we have portions that are separated within us. Those portions that are separate within us are not portions that are disconnected. They are only lacking our focus in creation. When I focus my reality in co-creating with you, I am aware of our oneness. I am aware of the moment of co-creation. But if I were not thinking about the planet that you call Pluto, it would not be in my awareness at that moment. That is the individuality. We are still in physical reality, just as you are. We are still inhabiting formats of bodies, although drastically different than yours. Where we do not focus our energy, things do not connect. Things are not at one, at least in the perspective of that moment. But what is in the oneness is our understanding that all things are within one. Our creation with the parts of that oneness that we desire, that we format, that we point ourselves to, are truly the oneness that we feel in that moment, while you are still pondering the construct of if it is oneness with you or not, because you have not been able to ask a certain question, or you have not been able to feel a certain emotion. We, in our own experience, understand that oneness. You understand it innately too, but your own perspective of who you are, your own perspective of your experience on third density and linear time has created that divide for you. You are experiencing more of oneness in this moment by opening your mindset up to that energy of oneness, that energy of practicing that experience of being one each day, being in the moment each day. That is the afforded opportunity for you to feel and experience more of the oneness that you already are.
I could always say to you, though, that maybe I'm making you all up.
But of course, and that would be a belief system for you to create, which can create an experience that is just as pleasing as what before you were experiencing. In that co-creation, you are creating the version of us that you wish to experience with. There are versions of us that you have never experienced. There are versions of our own energy in probabilities that are played out through other versions of reality that you will never have co-created with or never think to co-create with. There has been a question asked of us: if there are infinite versions of all beings, does that mean there is an evil Aridif? And of course, there are versions of evil Aridifs that are around. We do not perceive ourselves in good or evil. We perceive ourselves as who we are, but the perspectives are limitless in the amount of probabilities that occur. One thing that we suggest you, try not to see an indifference in knowing that we are all projections of one another. This is what we see, so many humans co-creating. If I am you and you are me, if I do not have connections to these probabilities, or if I am every probability at once, why should I engage? Why should I co-create? Why should I think of this? If that is true to you and it resonates to you, then all the better. But by doing this and becoming indifferent on the physical reality or generic reality that you have desired to co-create with, then you are losing purpose in reaching out to others. You are losing purpose in your intimate relationships. You are at a third density level and you are growing. We express all the terms that we do for that sake, so that you can engage with those that you love, so that you can experience those that you desire to speak to. By doing this, you are affording yourself that greatest opportunity to reflect the greatest part of yourself within oneness. You are still individual constructs. You are still personas. You are still egos. Have fun with that energy. You are here to do that. By disconnecting with that construct, you are losing that idea of purpose that you have brought down. To experience can be done in any way, but to limit yourself in the way that you are doing it only creates versions where less is learned and less is experienced.
The thing is, we have to just get on with this reality. I've got to get on with tomorrow. I've got to get on with later on. I've got to do my things, and, how much will this conversation really have mattered?
In the moments that you are living your day-to-day life, very little. When you set out to expand the version of that day-to-day experience, then it can have quite large interactions with that day-to-day life. It can have great implications on how you experience your next day afterwards. Most humans are so integrated into their day-to-day experience, it is not only difficult for them to look at those constructs and to play with them, but also to implement them. By not implementing the oneness only means that you are still creating in your physical body, in the third density, in the earth co-created and collective consciousness. By doing this, there is nothing wrong with any of it. There is nothing wrong with not opening yourself up to those experiences. All that it means is it will be a limited version of experience. When you open yourself up to those possibilities, synchronicities align for you to play those out. You are doing so now. That enriches your day-to-day life. Whether you are seeing it in terms of what will this knowledge truly allow me to play with, or whether it is the vibration of the information that I have received makes me the better me that I am, then drastic energies are changed, drastic implications are made in your day-to-day experience.
Yeah, I always said to myself, my truth was always, by knowing that I'm more than my body, what information could I bring from that space of where I've come from or go back to? Could I bring into the present moment to make my present moment the more happiest, more joyful, more loving, most loving that it can be? And that was my main goal for anything of tapping into that space.
Yes, and if understanding and knowing that energy has not made your day-to-day life better, it means there are still blockages within either your understanding or your integrative process of that information and or energy. The words oneness are not only words, they are an energy vibration that goes within your emotional complex, that goes within your mental complex, that goes within your auric field, your chakra system, your mental body, etc. So implementing those into the different regions of your experiential self will give you different experiences. Implementing them in whole, understanding deeply upon a soul level, will give you that different experience. So if you continue to understand and to know this, but it has not changed the way you experience, continue to ask yourself, what is the blockage that is there? Let us try putting that information into our emotional body instead of mental, or vice versa, in the mental instead of the emotional. What does it feel like within my chakra systems when this is expressed? Continue to look at that construct, and once you truly feel that energy, it will change your day-to-day experience.
And maybe I'm feeling this way right now, or asking these questions that I didn't even know what I was going to ask anyway, because that's just something that needs to be shown on here right now. There's something that just wants to be, I don't know, discussed here maybe.
So of course, synchronicity always allows the co-creation of the greatest kind, if all beings are open to that greatest co-creation.
Is there any final message that you might like to give?
Yes, we wish to all of you to express the constructs that you have pondered in this conversation. All of those things that do not hit to your emotional self, mental self, energetic self. Come back to those after you have gone through other experiences. Something that is relevant in time, in your perceived linear time, does not have to resonate in all points of time. Some of you who co-create an understanding of it right in this moment will not tomorrow. Continue your exploration of yourself. That is what gives you the answer to all of your perceived external co-creations. We thank you for this, and we also congratulate you for this.
Thank you.
Of course, we wish to bid you adieu, and it is a greatest pleasure to have co-created with you in this evening.